Hello, welcome to the next class within your overall training classroom. This class is going to cover the training for a peer fitness leader. Again, my name is Coach Adam Whistler from the Schriever Guarding Resilience team, and I'll be leading you through today's training. First, we need to understand the roles and responsibilities of a peer fitness leader. Now, a peer fitness leader is primarily responsible for leading human performance and readiness sessions, that's HPR sessions, that align with the Commander, UFCM, and GRIT guidance overall. Now, those HPR sessions will give you an example of what that looks like, but are primarily focused on education and training, versus a physical training session, a PT session, is mainly focused on the physical fitness and training and resilience aspect of those two branches, HPR sessions and PT sessions. So PFLs also can execute those GRIT-approved PT sessions, like I was just mentioning, in alignment with 2.19.5. So those physical training sessions are also fall underneath your responsibility. Now, PFLs are encouraged to routinely collaborate with their local guarding resilience teams to discuss those planning considerations and the execution of all HPR and PT training sessions. Now, if you're watching this as a DFM or UFCM or even a PFL, we do recommend that it would be very effective for you to be certified as not only a PFL, but also as a BCM and an HPA administrator, because this is the main crux of what a PFL is responsible for, is leading group training. Now, it would also be helpful because this member is one of the three main members within the UFC. The BCM and HPA administrator are the other two, members or roles within a unit fitness cell. Now, it would be highly effective for most of those members within the unit fitness cell or UFC to be certified as a PFL, a BCM, and an HPA administrator. That's not mandatory, but it would absolutely be a more effective or efficient system for you, your Delta, and overall your UFC. So with that being said, we need to look at the PFL requirements to be certified as a PFL. The first one, getting that certification of training from your Delta Fitness Manager, and that can be conducted through this digital classroom or in person with a guarding resilience team. You'll need an appointment letter from your commander noting that you are assigned as a peer fitness leader, and then you'll also need a CPR and AED certification, and making sure that that CPR AED cert is not an online only training, that it has a hands-on component for that CPR and AED. Okay, so what we want to talk about, if PFLs are primarily responsible for group training, those HPR sessions and PT sessions, we should take a look at some planning considerations for how to lead group training. So again, this is kind of where we're looking at GRIT coaches will help a lot with conducting the planning and coordination for some of these sessions and overall schemes for how to create these things. But I wanted to take a moment and think about the difficulty of managing group sessions of various sizes. It can be really difficult, right? You might be dealing with a session that has 5 personnel on Monday and then 30 personnel on Wednesday, and maybe you're going to do an entire squadron with 115 personnel on Friday. That's a very challenging situation where you need to have a lot of considerations before you go into planning that overall session. So we're going to talk about some of those considerations here. Prior planning before you get to that session is absolutely key to making sure that you're planning quality training sessions. So working in collaboration with your local guarding resilience team staff, some of these considerations that you and your GRIT coach should be considering include the space that you have available, because it's very different if you have like an office-sized space of like a 30 by 30 space, or if you're going to be outdoors on a large track, like a 400-meter track with a turf infield on the inside. So those are very different amounts of space available, and that would also change the session that you're going to be able to complete. Further, you have the time that you have available. So is this a 30-minute training session, a 45-minute training session, a 90-minute training session? Like that would determine a lot of these components within that training session for whether that's an HPR education session or if you're covering physical training. That time that you have available is going to absolutely determine the contents within that session. Further, you have the number of personnel you expect to be at that session and in attendance and participating. So when we think about the number of personnel, it's obviously a very different approach if you have 5 or if you have 100, right? Another consideration is the equipment you have access to. Do you have access to a whole range of weights for dumbbells, kettlebells, barbells, and so on? Or do you basically have access to body weight and a track, or body weight and an open grass field? So those are very critical components that you must consider before you build a session. Now, when we're trying to make this a larger program, we need to be sure that we are publishing the goal stimulus for these sessions. So understanding the session's goal stimulus, whether or not this is an interval run, some sort of body weight training, but body weight focused on push-ups, body weight focused on lunges and legs, or body weight focused on running. Those are all very different goal stimuli for a training session. And so the best to your ability, trying to publish a session's goal stimulus for a group so that they're aware of that and they can factor that into their own training. That would be very, very helpful for everyone that you are training with. So for example, if we know that we're doing an interval run on Wednesday, but we have a member in the unit who didn't know that, and maybe they did an interval run on Tuesday, we could increase the risk of injury for someone who did that interval run on Tuesday and then has to go and do another interval run training session on Wednesday if we didn't tell them that that's what they were going to expect on that Wednesday's training session. So making sure that not only you're considering the goal stimulus in the session you're building to achieve that goal stimulus, but also for your members so that they can understand, hey, this is what I know for what to expect this coming Wednesday. And this is how I'm going to change my own training to align with what I know I'm going to do with my group later this week. Okay. Then we have, of course, the session's format. So after we understand some of these main criteria here, we need to start to consider the session's training format. And so then we can also consider some scaling options, whether that's progressions to make it harder or regressions to make it a little bit different. Not necessarily only always easier, but such that we can scale and still achieve the goal stimulus for everyone involved, regardless of ability level or movement restrictions. So we're going to talk about some session formats that we can use after we've considered some of these items right there in that list. So when we think about how to manage a group and what types of training methods or formats might be effective, one of the ones that is highly effective and also pretty easy that a lot of people may be familiar with include what's called an every minute on the minute. So EMOM, we have an EMOM. So this EMOM, it could be every minute on the minute. So at 0, if I start my stopwatch, at 0, we do our first set. And then at 1 minute, maybe, we do our second set. And then at 2 minutes, we do our third set. At 3 minutes, we do our fourth, and so on and so forth. Or that could be at 0 on the clock, we do our first set. And then at 2 minutes on the clock, we do our second set. And then we do every 2 minutes on the 2 minutes, or every 3 minutes on the 3 minutes. So you can use all these different types of durations. Maybe that's every 15 seconds, maybe every 20, 30, whatever. But you're having this predictable interval every blank amount of time on the blank amount of time. So you have a predictable work to rest ratio where you're working for a certain period of time or a certain amount of effort, and then you get to rest for the remainder of that time. So an example of an EMOM that one of my friends enjoys using pretty frequently is he'll have 4 exercises, for example. He'll split someone off into a group of 4. They'll have one person at each of these 4 exercises. Then they'll do 30 seconds. At the same time, everyone starts at the same time. They'll do 30 seconds of that exercise, and then they'll basically have a beep and then be told to rotate. Then they get 30 seconds of rest before they start the next minute. So then all 4 members are starting at the same time, and then they're not interfering with each other. So they're going from exercise 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so on. And then that member essentially is able to do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds rest, so it becomes an every minute on the minute set for a specific period of time. Maybe they do that for 3 total sets, so 3 times 4 is 12 minutes. So we have a very predictable and time-effective method of training to manage a large group. Another way that we can use this is as many rounds or reps as possible. You might know this as an AMRAP. So in blank amount of time, in 10 minutes, I want you to complete as many rounds as possible of, let's say, 1 lap on the track, doing 10 push-ups, doing 10 air squats. Do that for 10 minutes and complete as many rounds as possible. Something super basic and easy to understand, but that gives us a predictable time window, and then people are able to scale that. So if we have someone who's highly fit, maybe that individual is able to get, let's say, 5 laps and 5 rounds complete, so they did 50 repetitions of both of those exercises and 1.25 miles of running. However, someone else maybe is scaling this a little bit by going a little bit slower for them, but still trying to work as hard as they're able to within that same 10-minute time window. Maybe they did 2.5 rounds, and that's totally fine. So it allows members to kind of scale things to themselves in a predictable period of time. And then you can essentially have people do very similar sessions in that format as well. Another format you can use is called a chipper. So a chipper is kind of you're like chipping away at certain things. So you might have an example session, something like 100 push-ups, 100 air squats, and 100 cross-leg reverse crunches. So then you have to just complete in any order you want. Maybe, for example, in a chipper, you have multiple exercises done for, let's say, 100 reps of those 3 exercises. And then you could do 20, 20, 15, and then 20, 20, 15. And then you're at, a total number of repetitions, keeping count. And then you're trying to just chip away at those total numbers of reps. Sometimes you could go out of order in any order you want, called partitioning. Or you could just go in order. You have to complete all 100 before you move on to the next thing. And then all 100 before you move on to the next thing. And so on and so forth. But that's a style of training called a chipper of type of a workout. Another thing, and this kind of ties into the chipper, is something for time. So you could do a chipper, of course, for time. You're trying to do that relatively quickly. You could also do this for quality or for technical execution. But let's say for time, a for-time workout is generally completing a certain number of repetitions of these specific exercises, plural or maybe even singular, for a specific number of rounds for time, so as fast as possible. So an example for something like that might be 10 reps of push-ups and cross-leg reverse crunches for 3 rounds as fast as possible. So you'll do 10 push-ups, 10 reverse crunches, 10 push-ups, 10 cross-leg reverse crunch, 10 push-ups, 10 cross-leg reverse crunch, and then that would be that for-time training session. Another idea is something called an I go, you go, or a you go, I go, either way. You could do this in groups of 2, groups of 3, groups of 4, something similar to that. But essentially, one person will be completing a series of exercises, or maybe just one exercise, such as a run, while another rests or multiple partners rest. Then the other partner or partners completes that series while the first person rests. So if we had, let's say, 1 lap on the track, I might have partner A one lap around the track, and then partner B is resting while A is going. And then partner B goes as soon as partner A finishes that lap. So then partner B does 1 lap while partner A rests. And then that would be a you go, I go style of session for this overall training session. And then you could say you're going to do this you go, I go session for 1 lap around the track for, let's say, 6 total sets or 6 rounds. Finally, one thing to consider is there's a wide range of ability levels or fitness levels within a group, especially if you're dealing with a larger group. So you could also consider what we'll call ability groups. Ability groups essentially means that you are assigning members within a group aligning with their overall fitness or capacity. And so you might have an ability group A, B, C, ability group 1, 2, 3, whatever you want to call it. But those ability groups will provide you the opportunity to more effectively, what we talked about before, scale a workout to make it either harder or possibly different. Because what if you assign an ability group of restricted abilities, such as multiple individuals on a lower body profile who are conducting a conditioning training session? Well, if everyone else in the group is going to be conducting a running training session, well, maybe one separate ability group is going to have limited ability to go run, and then that group is going to be assigned to go and do a fan bike where they get to use more of their arms, or a ski erg where they get to use more of their arms and torso, for example. And so this ability group format also allows you to scale for fitness as well as potential exemptions or things that people can or cannot do. So that's another way to think about your considerations for scaling different group training sessions. So those are some of the main planning considerations for managing groups, how to build workouts, and then examples for formats for how to put those workouts into an actual coherent format for building those sessions. Now, we'll go over a quick example of the difference between an HPR and a PT training session. So for human performance and readiness, those HPR sessions are primarily focused on providing education or hands-on experience with health and fitness topics. Oftentimes, these things could be supported by a member of the Guardian Resilience team, and that may include mental health, physical therapy, fitness, whether it's conditioning or training or body weight. But an example session that something like a PFL could run would be maybe the unit commander wants to prepare members for their upcoming human performance assessment, that upcoming HPA next year. Well, to align with that commander's intent, that PFL Specialist Smith sets up an HPA prep day to educate members on the different components of that HPA. So maybe some members are not aware that they have access to choosing between a normal push-up or a hand release push-up. Maybe they've never done the hand release push-up before. So this PFL Specialist Smith is going to educate the members on what they have available to them within an HPA. The same thing might go for educating those members on how to do a hammer and how to do a cross-leg reverse crunch, how to properly do a forearm plank. So those things are things that can be considered as education on those movement standards, how to do them, and then those grading charts for each of those components. That PFL may also allow members to gain experience with alternative components by educating them about these things so that they are more informed on one of their test days for their upcoming HPA. That would be an example of a phenomenal HPR session that any of you PFLs could run at any time. Again, as long as you prepared for it and had a plan in mind, and then bounce that plan off of a local Gardening Resilience team coach. So for a physical training session, these are mainly geared toward a workout session that's organized and led by you, the PFL, or a grit coach or DPT. Often, these grit coaches can lead these sessions or provide a template, an example training session that may achieve the goal stimulus you are looking for. So for example, if you're looking for a running intervals workout for a group, you may go to your grit coach and then say, hey, we need to do a running intervals workout to get prepared for our upcoming HPA. Can you help me build a training program that gets us ready for our 2-mile HPA that's coming up in, let's say, April? So then you and the grit coach could work together to build a session that would achieve that goal, right? So an example session for a unit of 30 members. Let's say that this unit of 30 members is going into a physical training session. So a PFL could help lead a warm-up with this group, split into 3 teams of 10 people, and then partner up. You may split into 3 teams of 10 based on ability levels. You may just split based off of how tall people are. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you and what this session is going to be essentially comprised of, right? And so then we'll have individuals partner up, and partners can do that you go, I go, every minute on the minute style of session for 12 minutes at each station. And so an example of something like that is an every minute on the minute, you go for 1 minute, then I go for 1 minute. We do that for 6 total rounds because I get to do 6, I get to do half, and then you get to do half. So then that's that you go, I go in an every minute on the minute type of set for each of these 3 stations. When you're done with your station of 12 minutes, you can rotate to the next station. You may assign one group of 10 to station 1 first, one group of 10 to station 2, and then one group of 10 to station 3. And then you can have them rotate 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 back to 1, right? And so then that would allow you to essentially conduct a training session with a little bit of running work, a little bit of push-ups or strength work, and then a little bit of core work as well in this partner, you go, I go, every minute style format for 12 minutes at each station. That's a highly effective session, can be done in a wide range of available space, be a wide range of available personnel, time available. It's very predictable because we have 12 minutes at each of those stations. So we know that we're going to fit within a specific amount of time. We know that session's goal stimulus is HPA preparation. So we're checking all these boxes that we need to factor in when we're considering planning overall PT sessions. Okay. Again, this is just one example. This doesn't necessarily, any one of these could change. So we could change the exercises. We could change these exercises. If we had more equipment, maybe we do have access to a plate. Maybe we have access to a dumbbell. Well, like you could switch that thing out, and then you could switch some of these strength pieces to be whatever made sense for you and your group, right? So here's an example of what that would look like. Now, we've talked a lot about planning group sessions, both HPR sessions and PT sessions. For the overall summary, you must work with your Gardening Resilience teams to help build and execute those HPR sessions and PT sessions. Again, those HPR sessions primarily for education, and then PT sessions primarily for fitness development and training, right? And then you, the PFLs, are responsible for understanding group management during those PT sessions and coming in with a very deliberate plan and providing that plan to your unit in advance, okay? And like I said throughout this brief, please work with your local Gardening Resilience teams so that you can actually refine some of these sessions and the methods that we've covered in this brief, your local grits would absolutely be happy to work with you on any of these factors. And so, I hope to be seeing many of you, and I know all my peers could essentially say the same thing. So thanks for joining us in this module. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.